Welcome to First Parish Church in Billerica, a Unitarian Universalist welcoming congregation. Whoever you are or wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here this morning. Our worship leader this morning is Karl Müller. They're from UU Mass Action. Claire goes by they, them pronouns. They have organized for climate and environmental justice since 2007. First Parish Church in Billerica was founded in 1658 to serve the settlers who arrived here from England to found the town of Billerica. We wish to acknowledge the spiritual and physical connection the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts peoples of the Wabanaki nations have maintained to their homeland and to the land, water, flora, and fauna here in this place that we call Billerica, and to acknowledge the role which our First Parish Church played in their removal in the founding of this town. We also acknowledge the hardships they continue to endure after the loss of unceded homelands and commit to our responsibility to foster relationships and opportunities that strengthen the well-being of the Indigenous people who carry forward the traditions of their ancestors here and everywhere.
There's too much beauty in this world to give up on it yet. And it's always too soon to surrender to cynicism. Bring your doubt, your skepticism, your downright confusion, even your bitterness. But in the midst of all of these, wrap your tender fingers around that still bright thread of hope. Feel in your heart that still steady hunger for something more. The vision we glimpse every day in the rising sun across the foothills, the light that spreads across the face of the one we love, the look of knowing all there is to know and still loving life, loving us, just as it is, just as we are. For this hour, we come to celebrate, to praise, to give thanks, to refuse to give up, to steady ourselves, keepers of hope, brave builders of this still possible world. Come, let us worship together. When despair for the world grows in me, I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be. I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you all. This is my first time with you, and I can tell that you're a really loving community. For those who I haven't met, my name is Karl, or Karl Claire, or Karl, or Claire. I'm a non-binary human with flexible first names. You can't get it wrong unless you try to give me a nickname. And I'm the movement building director at UU Mass Action. UU Mass Action is your statewide nonprofit dedicated to mobilizing UUs for justice at the state level. This morning, I want to talk about democracy. It came up. I'm sure it comes up a lot. And we're in a rough time. In my family of origin, I'm the child of two public school teachers, one of whom voted almost my entire childhood for the Republican Party, and the other voted almost entirely for the Democratic Party. And so as a young person, I would watch my parents debate and chat. And I'm so grateful that I got to witness respectful, loving political discourse from different perspectives that were so clearly rooted in love. Because that's not always the case now, is it? And so last year, when our nation democratically re-elected an authoritarian, my reaction, just like the first time, was not just heartbreak, but also my personal reaction, which is to always run towards a problem. I woke up the morning after and said, all right, let's go. What's the plan? What do we have to do? How are we gonna fix this? We, pick your weapon of choice, we ride at dawn. It's a little intense. My own partner is like, can you do that over there? Because I need to just grieve a little bit. I understand it's not for everyone. But this time, and this last year and a couple months, it has been harder to keep going. And I've noticed that I've really had to intentionally fill my cup before I try to pour out, so that I'm not trying to do this work from empty. And in the search for grounding in this new accelerated phase of the American empire, I have found myself putting my mind towards the Native people that were mentioned in that acknowledgement. After all, they have been working against the American empire to heal it of its hard places for centuries. I want to share with you the words from a song by Lila June that I cannot stop returning to. If you don't know Lila June, she's an indigenous musician, scholar, community organizer with Navajo, Cheyenne, and European lineages. She says, in our old societies, the greatest honor and bravery was bestowed to those who gave their lives, not those who took lives. In what ways might we give our lives to this war? In what ways might we dedicate our time and energy to the children, the women, the elders? Yes, it is a battle of sorts, but not one of physical might. No, this is a battle of spiritual fortitude, where the deepest love and compassion are the only source of true and lasting victory. There will be no winning in a game where even one person loses. The only victory comes from lifting up all beings, all relations, and the only weapons we may use are truth, faith, and love. Right? Gets me every time. Just grounds me, centers me. There are layers upon layers in those 9 sentences. The first is that energetic difference between giving versus taking. So I come from a climate organizing background before coming to UU Mass Action 5 years ago. And in the climate and environmental movement, I have often found myself to be fighting the chemical companies, fighting the gas companies, fighting the fossil fuel companies. And these days, we've added to that list, fighting the billionaires and the oligarchs and the tech bros and the would-be kings. It's exhausting, right? To always have this fighting stance. We gotta get out there and fight, fight, fight. And I have wondered sometimes, what would it look like to have a different orientation? What would it look like, feel like, to have a loving, healing orientation? I remember noticing this trend and obsession with fighting all the time, especially during the pandemic early on, when it's literally an illness that we're trying to heal, And yet all of the propaganda and messaging was, we gotta fight COVID, fight, fight, fight. It's like, oh my gosh, even now, when we're sick together, we can't even get to a healing orientation. I mean, what would that look like if there were campaigns to heal the climate, to heal the oil companies or the gas companies of their greed, sickness, to heal the billionaires or the oligarchs of their power, sickness? Maybe that's what trauma-informed activism looks like. It reminds me of the story of the Wendigo. If you've never heard of the Wendigo is a malevolent or evil spirit from Algonquin culture. Algonquin culture spans this land, the whole Northeast, into the Midwest. And the Wendigo is known to possess humans. When you are possessed by a Wendigo, you have insatiable hunger. You want to eat and take and eat and take, even to the point of cannibalism. I have heard it said that when settlers came to these shores, including some of my own ancestors, some of the native people interacted with them and wondered, are they okay? Are they possessed by a Wendigo? Because they seem to want to take and take and take. And knowing what I know about my ancestors coming from Europe, escaping religious wars, their own pandemic of the Black Death or witch hunts, I'm pretty sure they were deeply traumatized, in need of some healing. At one of the earliest unorganized rallies last year at the Federal Building in downtown Boston, where people were starting to kind of organically gather to call on our federal delegation, I remember feeling it out, going to check it out, and someone just spontaneously in the crowd started the chant, "Lock him up, lock him up." And people joined in. And my heart sank a little bit. Are we gonna be like them and just revenge back, do to them what they did to us? Can we not be different? Hi there. Do you want to say something?
From my perspective, it wasn't out of revenge anymore. They're going to keep hurting people as long as they live, so make them stop doing that.
I love that perspective. Yeah, we do need to stop the harm, 100%. Thank you for naming that. The thing that I thought as I was in that crowd was, what would happen if I tried to start a chant that went something like, mandatory therapy, mandatory therapy? Would people join in? Or would they look at me like, what is that person saying?
That can probably get away from those past cells.
Now, I want to be clear, we have to be cautious about who we call sick or who needs to have mandatory therapy. Those concepts have been used and weaponized against Native people, against queer people. But you get my point. Lila June goes on in her song to say, there will be no winning in a game where even one person loses. Not even one? My goodness. That's a tall charge. But isn't it glorious? Sometimes on the left, you'll hear a term thrown around about collective liberation. And it's tossed about as if, that's just the thing we're doing. But that's a really tall order. That's a big dream. That's a movement that's working to liberate everybody. That includes the dictators. That includes the oppressors, the abusers. Not even one person is left behind. Multicultural, deep democracy, abundance. That's the vision I hope that we are all working for. Now, of course, not everyone is on the same team working towards that vision. Author and scholar Sir John Glubb, he studied empires. He actually studied 13. He looked in the Middle East, in Asia, in Europe, and he saw this very clear pattern of how empires rise and fall. There's 6 different stages that they typically take, and they only last roughly 250 years. Now, if you don't know, this summer, the 4th of July, this is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. So we are right on schedule for some transformation. But I want to describe what he calls the last stage of an empire. It's called the Age of Decadence. In the Age of Decadence, wealth and power have led to petty and negative behaviors. There's a prevalence of narcissism, consumerism, materialism, nihilism, fanaticism. There's a celebrity culture that's worshiping athletes, actors, and singers. Sound familiar, anyone? I think it's quite possible that that is where we're at. And I take strange comfort in reading this because I'm finding myself realizing this moment is new for this land, but it's also completely not new. Humans have lived and survived through the fall of empires many, many times. And we don't have to live in empire. That is not inevitable. We can use this moment of transformation to transform into something better, a different, more whole way of doing things together. Lila June says, yes, it is a battle of sorts, but not one of physical might. No, this is a battle of spiritual fortitude, where the deepest love and compassion are the only source of true and lasting victory. Now, I work at home, and on the wall of my home office, I have a quote from Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin is a gay black man who worked behind the scenes with Martin Luther King for the March on Washington. And he knew a thing about spiritual fortitude. The quote from him says, "Loving your enemy is manifest in putting your arms not around the man, but around the social situation, to take power from those who misuse it, at which point they become human too." When I think about ICE agents, people in our communities, in our lives, who've chosen to take a job with DHS, first of all, I think they probably need some support and therapy. But more so, I think about how are we going to get through this? I don't want to try and go out and hug them, put my arms around them. I don't think that's going to work. But I also know that in the victory we are aiming for, they cannot lose. I want to work to build power with you, with our movement, to take power back from those who are misusing it. I think you can name a couple folks who are misusing it, who are funding the DHS to have a budget, I believe I've heard, almost as large as the US Army, right? We need to build power to take that back so that people can leave the job of ICE agent, at which point they can become more human too. And so, lastly, my favorite part of the quote from Lila June, when she says, "The only weapons we may use are truth, faith, and love." That is definitely the movement that I want to be in, that I am working to build, and I invite you to be in. I want to be clear. Not everyone has to be at the standout, at the protest, at No Kings on March 28th if that is not for you. That's okay. any way that you are contributing more truth, more faith, or more love into this world, you are helping heal this American empire. You are helping us transform into something new and better. But I do want you to pick your weapon of choice, because we ride at dawn. There's too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There's too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. There's too much pain in the world to not heal every day. Each of us ministers to a weary world. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving, more compassionate, and more filled with the grace of divine presence every day.